The Illusionists by Lacy Loar-Gruenler. The old professor and the younger ones strolled, as was their lunchtime habit, from work at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study toward their respective homes on Mercer Street. German peppered their conversation, the language native to them both. New life had fleshed out the skeletal tree leaves lining the sidewalks along the way, the smell of camphor drifting with the spring breeze on April 17th, 1955. Professor Einstein licked a vanilla ice cream cone, his knees clacking like marbles in his pocket, the bounce in his once light step slowed to a shuffle from the pain in his groin. The walrus mustache was white now, the shock of matching hair haloing his head barely contained beneath a creased summer fedora. Ancient suspenders held up his baggy and rumpled linen trousers, an afterthought so he needn't think of them till evening. He had thickened and softened with age, but his eyes, now hooded and bagged, twinkled just the same as always. "I've not been so well, Kurt. I do not believe I have much time left," he said, conducting his ice cream cone like a symphony baton. Einstein had been treated in the past for an aortic aneurysm, and the doctors said there was little they could do except prescribed rest and a healthy diet. 2 weeks at the beach in Florida had helped. "Time, Zeit, he said. "When we are young, it stretches infinitely before us, and now I look back and see that 76 years have passed as quickly as an atom splits." Einstein sighed. "I wish I were young again and know what I know now." Professor Gödel was a lanky question mark of a man, 27 years younger than Einstein. Dressed like a fusty gentleman farmer, he tipped his straw hat in acquiescence, then gently grasped Einstein's elbow to guide him. "Mein lieber Freund, Albert, I have phoned Helen to let her know you are not feeling well, and there is no need for this wistfulness. We have murdered time, you and I. Besides, I am preparing a little surprise for you. I will have it ready tonight." "Ach," Einstein said, "I am very fond of surprises." The pair ambled on, Einstein lamenting that he had not yet cracked his elusive unified field theory, the theory of everything, which he wished to finish before he died. "Think of it, Kurt. If these equations could explain the entire universe, if we could only know all truths." "It sounds like you wish to come face to face with God and have a chat with him." "God does not have a face and is not a him," Einstein said. "But I do think it's better for people to believe in a kindly Father that looks like they do, or else we would have them believing in unkind ones again. The universe, its mysteries of time and space and gravity, that's the higher power I look upon with utmost awe, my cosmic religion." Decades earlier, Einstein had succeeded in transforming time into a fourth dimension of space, proving that this passage of time differs depending on gravity and speed. His general theory of relativity garnered for him the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics. Gödel had elaborated and spun Einstein's time-space continuum into a web of infinite diverging and converging threads wrapped and warped by matter into paths back to the past and into the future. On paper, at least, time travel was possible. "If we can visit the past, it never really passed," Gödel mused. "If we can visit the future, it's past before it's present, and so time is an illusion. It is no time at all." "And if these paths are infinite," Einstein said, "the dimensions to which we travel are infinite. We are good friends in this dimension, but in another, we might not even know each other." "Perhaps our younger selves from another dimension are sitting in the tea trees, watching us now," Gödel mused. Einstein's hearty laugh displaced several birds roosting in the branches. He waved merrily as they flew away. "Ethics are a conundrum," he said. "Yes, I've thought of that," Gödel said. If we visit the near past where we ourselves had lived, we could come upon our younger selves and do something to them that we know did not happen. Einstein nodded. Perhaps I would not have two ex-wives if I had thought about this years ago. But he thought of it now. Upon learning that his friend of 6 decades, Michel Besseau, had died earlier that week, Einstein had written his condolences. He has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion. Awaiting his arrival, Helen Dukas paced the covered stoop in front of 112 Mercer Street, a stately colonial where she lived with Einstein and his stepdaughter Margot. She had spent almost half her 60 years as Einstein's secretary and housekeeper. Everything about her was efficient, the kind of woman who mends and patches torn lives, as she had done after fleeing Nazi Germany with the Einsteins, and again after Einstein's divorce from Elsa, and again after the death of his sister Masha, mending and patching the professor as effortlessly as she sewed the buttons on his shirts, married only to her job with him. She clucked and fretted, patting the graying bun at her nape as she raced down the brick steps in her sensible shoes to greet him, the pain visible on his face. Is everything all right? She asked, stroking his cheek affectionately. Everything is all right. It is just I who am not all right, he said. He dug into his pants pocket and pulled out a handful of paper scraps covered with scribbled calculations. He handed one to Gödel. Perhaps this will finally lead to answers. Or more questions, Gödel said, shaking Einstein's trembling hand before heading home, calling over his shoulder, I will see you tonight with your surprise. Helen helped Einstein climb the stairs and steered him like a rudder to his study. She sat him in a worn leather chair in front of the gentle fire. Light played in the mirrored room, partially shuttered against the midday sun. A green as deep as the forest shadowing the walls, sky blue reflecting from the glass into Einstein's eyes twinkling in the blue. Helen felt time suspended. She had stood there reverently before. It was a kind of love, she thought. Einstein decided to work a little longer and requested a light lunch. Helen retreated to the kitchen and returned with a silver tray laid with a china plate of scrambled eggs and mushrooms, a glass of milk, and a compote of fresh strawberries for dessert. She tucked the linen napkin under his chin and handed him the fork. She flipped open the notebook she always carried. I will cancel your appointments for tomorrow. You must get your rest. I have plenty of time to rest when I am dead. Besides, I am feeling better. Einstein finished his meal and resumed working. His upcoming radio dress commemorating the 7th anniversary of the Israeli state was neatly printed in German, almost finished. More equations filled blank pages. Eventually, he set them both aside. Tired, he retreated to his bedroom for a nap. Soon the stillness in the light-filled room was shattered by a crash of pocket change and Einstein's violin pulled from the walnut bureau, followed by a thump that sent Helen sprinting up the stairs. Einstein lay semi-conscious on the floor, moaning. His face was shiny like newly oiled leather, despite the coolness of the day. He could not lift his head, and he tried to hold his breath, as the pain tracked him by his labored inhalations. She propped his head with a feather pillow, ripping the patchwork quilt from the bed to cover him before racing for the phone. Please hurry, doctor. Professor Einstein has collapsed. Doctors Parker and Lefebvre, one sturdy and florid, the other bearded and pale, lifted Einstein into bed and administered morphine for the pain. They spoke in whispers as Helen paced, blotting errant tears with her sleeve. Professor, we are recommending that you be removed to the hospital, where an experienced surgeon can evaluate you and perhaps operate to repair the aneurysm. Although that is a grave proposition, Dr. Parker said. You are saying that it is unlikely surgery will be successful? I do not want it anyway. I have done my share, and it's time to go. Einstein waved his arms like an angel's flapping wings. Doctor, I am not afraid of death, but I am concerned about the pain. Will there be much? I am not such a brave old fool, anxious to endure that. It is hard to say with internal hemorrhaging, sometimes hours, sometimes a split second. Parker turned to Helen. We will call the ambulance to transport him so we can administer morphine as he needs it. And then he turned to Einstein. You must go to the hospital, Albert. I insist. You are making this too hard on Helen. Finally, Helen's stoicism gave way, and the tears cascaded down her face, which she wiped furiously with her other sleeve. Einstein patted Helen's hand. Oh, you're really hysterical. I have to pass on sometime, and it doesn't really matter when. Dear Helen, please call Kurt. He has a surprise for me tonight, and I want to be sure he finds me. Princeton Hospital smelled like chemicals with an undernote of urine. Lights flashed and buzzard beeped as Einstein was escorted to his private room, the morphine finally dulling his pain. Helen arranged for a second bed. She refused to leave his side. Margot and Einstein's son, Hans Albert, visited a subdued Einstein, still scribbling his calculations and fashioning his radio address. Night fell, a veil of quiet and darkness blanketing the room. Just past midnight, Einstein lay curled on his side, staring out the window at the stars, when he heard the door creak open and muffled footfalls across the waxed linoleum. Psst, Albert! It's me, Kurt. I've come for you. Gödel's shadow undulated on the whitewashed wall, anchored by a wheelchair. Shh! Do not wake Helen, Einstein whispered. He changed into his street clothes, tiptoed to the wheelchair, and let Gödel arrange a plaid wool blanket across his lap. Where are we going? That is my surprise. Gödel wheeled Einstein past the nurse's station, nodding with authority until they reached the exit. Gödel bundled Einstein into his Ford Skyliner, drove the short distance to his own, and helped Einstein through the wooden gate into the fenced backyard. A full moon and millions of milky stars illuminated Gödel's surprise and Einstein's delighted face. With tiny motors whirring, a hatch slid open and stairs descended from a behemoth silver bullet poised to shoot skyward. Gödel had some trouble loading Einstein into the cramped captain's cabin, ringed by portholes and filled with brass poles and blinking buttons. But finally he shut the hatch. Where shall we travel, Albert? I suggest the future, where we could discover if you and I really do live forever because our work has transcended time. Or shall we choose the past, where we might as rascals change the course of history? We could assassinate Adolf Hitler in his crib. Why not both? After all, we are the illusionists who murdered time. Gödel fired the engine. It belched and rumbled, then sighed and purred. The ground below them caught fire and scorched, the bullet arcing heavenward, flooding the area with golden light. Einstein gazed out the porthole, waving goodbye to Gödel's dog baying on the stoop, his own house down the street, recognizable but dark as a grave. And then the earth flattened, the green trees hunkered together, the black ocean grew larger, the doll houses tinier and tinier as the stars expanded to some magnificent canopy over the receding present. Gödel pointed and spoke, but Einstein couldn't hear him for the engine keening in his ears. Up, faster still, through gray incessant rain, through clouds of spidery falling stars, faster, through pelting meteor showers, through confines of mechanical time, through a looping secret pathway to the past. The stars lit the way. Gödel turned sharply left. There's the road, Albert. Hang on. At dawn in the waterside quarter of Ulm, where the Blau stream feeds the Danube, an old man sits on a stone wall with the fishermen who cast their lines for trout. In deep thought, he scribbles on a scrap of paper, gazing occasionally skyward at the cantilevered roofs and circling birds. It is April 18th, 1890. 10-year-old Albert skips to the stream along Kungasse Kiss Alley, named for the intimate distance between the houses' painted faces. He comes upon the old man whose head is bowed, his twinkling eyes shaded by a summer fedora pulled low, although his cloud-like hair escapes. "Hallo, Herr, what are you doing?" the boy asks. Startled, the old man looks up, mild amusement in his smile. "Resting after a long trip," he says, rising to stroll along the Danube. Herr, you forgot your paper," the boy calls after him, picking up the scrap before it blows away. Equations crossed out and reconfigured, the last one circled or scrawled in a somewhat shaky hand. And it read like this. "You keep the paper. It's a puzzle you will enjoy," the old man says. The boy cups his hand to holler past the quay, "Danke, Herr. But how did you know I like puzzles?" The old man is gone, lost in the encroaching pearl-gray mist. The boy shrugs and stuffs the paper into his pocket before he skips away. Morning cast a ghostly light over Einstein's hospital room, shy shadows hiding in the corners. Helen stirred from her troubled dream in which she asked Professor Einstein if he had seen what she had lost. "If you have lost something precious, then I will have to find a substitute." He dug into his rumpled pockets and tossed scraps of calculations in the air. They twirled and caught the wind, raining like confetti in a ticker tape parade, while an infinite number of invisible people cheered. Einstein called out in German, "Vielleicht treffen wir uns weiter," startling Helen awake. The room was warm and moist, filled with the cloying, musty smell of death. Helen crept to Einstein's side. He lay on his back, an amused smile beneath his walrus mustache. His radio address finished on the bedside table, a scrap of paper in his hand. He was staring skyward. "Professor Einstein," Helen whispered, and then a little louder. She couldn't feel a pulse, or see his chest rise, or hear him breathing, or taste anything but death. "Nurse! Nurse!" She took a scrap, crumpled in his grasp, and smoothed it. Two nurses came in, masked and gloved like white doves fluttering around the bed. In time, they stopped and turned to Helen. "I'm sorry. Professor Einstein is gone." One nurse said, "Did he say anything before he died?" Helen looked at the scrap. This must be the last thing he wrote. "Yes," the nurse said. "But did he speak?" "He did," Helen said, recalling Einstein's parade. "He spoke in German while I was dreaming. He said to the people cheering him, 'Perhaps we'll meet again.'"